If your FPL side is looking an absolute shambles, don't worry, I've got you covered with the ultimate wildcard for game week 17. Before we start today's video, I just want to say if you enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, be sure to like, comment and subscribe as we're closing in on 3,000 subscribers, and if we could hit that by the end of the year, it would be absolutely immense. But starting off our game week 17 wildcard, we have gone with Dubravka in goal, arguably the best cheap goalkeeper option. The other two been a little bit stinky over the past few weeks with injuries being dropped, all that good stuff. But Dubravka, he's in here. Newcastle did look very leggy in that first half. I am recording this at halftime in the Newcastle versus Spurs game. They didn't look at the races, to be honest, but there are some positive fixtures coming up for Newcastle. Fulham at home, that could be a tricky one, but Newcastle usually at home do keep clean sheets and put in positive performances. Then after that, they do take on Luton away and Nottingham Forest away. Then it's Liverpool and Manchester City. So not the easiest two after that, but then it kind of tails back to kind of being alright, you know, Villa, Luton, stuff like that. So I think for the price you're paying as well, I do think it just makes sense to go for Dubravka. The other goalkeeper that I think a lot of people would have been suggesting this week was Sanchez, but with him picking up an injury in Chelsea's game today, I think it kind of rules out that option, and I don't think there's any kind of real value in spending too much on a goalkeeper at the moment. So we've gone with Dubravka. We've got Turner on the bench as well. He seems to be back within the side. There's some very positive fixtures coming up for Nottingham Forest as well. You're looking at the Bournemouth, kind of the Bournemouth ones too, either side of kind of the fixture calendar at the moment. So in game week 18, and is that game week 23 as well, when they play Bournemouth both sides. So that's probably the weeks that you potentially would be looking to play Turner. Moving into the back line, we're going to start off with Gabriel. Now I know the Arsenal defence over the past few weeks has been frustrating, but I mean, which team hasn't, to be honest? All the defenders in the game at the moment seem to be super low scoring, unable to keep clean sheets. I think that's mainly down to the fact that the ball's in play more, games are playing for longer periods of time, so there is going to be less likely kind of clean sheets, more chances of goals as well. But we've gone with Gabriel. After the Brighton and Liverpool game, it goes quite nice for Arsenal, West Ham, Fulham, Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest. So a run where you would expect them to potentially keep a few clean sheets as well. I do think as well he has kind of cemented himself back into Arteta's plans. It doesn't mean that he's not prone to kind of rotation, but we've got some really good other defensive options on the bench, and I mean, our whole bench is pretty strong, to be honest. That could easily cover if Gabriel is potentially drop-shocked for one of these potential games. Moving on to our next defender, and it is Jarrad Branthwaite. Everton have been on an absolutely stupendous run of form at the moment. Since the points deduction, they have basically become a different team. Sean Dyche as well has done absolutely miracle work over there. They're up against his old side this weekend against Burnley, and I think Branthwaite for 4.1 million represents amazing value into a very strong defensive side. We've always seen that from Sean Dyche's sides. 4.1 million as well. The fixtures for Everton throughout the rest of the season, they never have kind of a clear run of solid games, but they kind of just odds and spots and rotate in and out of the side, and for 4.1 million, I don't think you're going to complain at that. They've got Burnley, then they've got Wolves, then they've got Fulham, would probably be the games that you're going to play them. Otherwise, it's going to be Burnley, Tottenham, City, Wolves, Villa, Fulham, Tottenham. So again, like I said, he's just going to kind of slot in and out of the side with the other kind of defenders that we've got in the side. But for 4.1 million, I would feel very comfortable playing this guy. He should be realistically 4.5, maybe even 4.6 million by this point in the game. But at 4.1 million, I think he represents amazing value to have in your side, especially the form that Everton are showing, especially some of the defensive performances as well that they are putting in so far this season. Moving on to our final defender, and it is Levi Colwill. Now, obviously was benched today, but with the injury to Reece James, that probably means that Diassi is going to kind of have to move to right back. Gusto is still a few weeks away from potentially playing first team action. He can also play at left back as well as centre back. There has been very good kind of positive comments from Pochettino about him potentially being a future captain of Chelsea as well. So he is very highly rated, and with them not keeping a clean sheet again, I think he will be back in that starting 11 at the weekend. Some really, really good fixtures fixtures coming up for Chelsea. Sheffield United, Wolves, Crystal Palace, Luton, Fulham, then Liverpool, then Wolves again. So some really, really strong fixtures coming up for them. So I definitely think for 4.5 million, we are probably going to see a little bit of rotation with him. But like I said, there are other players on our bench, Branthwaite, Diego Carlos, Taylor, that can cover him if not. But with a fixture run being this good, I know Chelsea are pretty dismal, but I still think we should be potentially trying to get at least 2 of their players into our side, because at some point, surely something has to click in. But we'll wait and see with Chelsea. Let's just see what happens. Moving into the midfield, it is Bukayo Saka. Very similar to what I spoke about with Gabriel. After game week 18, their fixtures are immense. And as you're going to see with the rest of this midfield, it is very, very template. And there's a very good reason for that. It is doing extremely well at the moment, delivering the points that we need. So, you know, Saka, his overall performances haven't been amazing, but he's been very consistent at picking up points. The Villa fixture this weekend, he wasn't great. Again, didn't pick up too much kind of underlying data as to go with that. But I do think he is Arsenal's key man. And if they potentially go and buy a forward in January, I think he could massively explode with some of their positive fixtures coming up after kind of January and kind of towards that title potentially run charge. I think he is just definitely a player that represents really good value at 9 million. Plays a lot of minutes as well, so never kind of have to worry about him potentially being rotated out of the squad as well. Moving on to our next midfielder, and it is Mohamed Salah. We're going to have him in before he does jet off to AFCON with Egypt. The fixtures, looking at it on paper, aren't amazing. It's a grey and then a red, but both at home against Manchester United and Arsenal, and we saw what Bournemouth did to United this weekend. Liverpool could be feasting, to be honest, ladies and gentlemen. Arsenal as well have proven that there's a little bit of shaky kind of, you know, not so secure at the moment. Then it's Burnley, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Arsenal. But then at that point, you probably would be looking to sell him anyway because he is off to AFCON. But then you'll want to probably buy him back after that point. But I definitely think he could offer himself up as a great captaincy option for this week. If Haaland is out, he could be the man that a lot of people do go for. Manchester United at home, yes, it's a grey fixture on the ticker. But in reality, is it really a grey fixture? No isn't the answer to that one. Salah as well, been a very consistent performer. Now got his 200th Premier League goal as well in the league. So hopefully he can build on that and put in some more positive performances, especially if he's going to have the armband for me this weekend. Moving on to our next midfielder, and it is Anthony Gordon. Like I said, this midfield is very, very template indeed. And there's very good reason for that. The next 3 fixtures for Newcastle on paper do look good, but Fulham are in good form. There is obviously Champions League and Carabao Cup games kind of slotted in between Newcastle's positive fixtures. I think just for the price point though, Anthony Gordon is justifying himself in this starting side. Let's see how he gets on in the second half of the Spurs game, potentially before wanting to bring him in. But looking at other teams, maybe I can't really see like any other kind of clear standout players. I know a lot of people have been hot on Hwang, but their fixtures are potentially taking a little bit of a turn. Maybe you could go for a second Spurs midfielder, but again, I just think Anthony Gordon is probably the midfielder that you want to go for. 6 million is an absolute bargain for some of the top quality performances that he has been putting in so far this season. Moving on to our next midfielder, and it is Cole Palmer. Very similar to Colwell, the Chelsea fixture run is absolutely immense, and he arguably has been the brightest spark within that Chelsea side. Yet again, today wasn't the kind of the performance that we've expected from him in kind of recent weeks, but still he was the key man. I think when he's not on the pitch, you can tell there's a big difference in that way, the kind of the Chelsea side play, their system, their confidence, with him being on penalties as well, and his rock bottom price of 5.4 million. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot go wrong with this man as well, with positive fixtures coming up. I know Chelsea are an absolute disaster class, but Cole Palmer has at least been steadily picking up points throughout the season. He has been the bright spark of their entire season so far, arguably one of the best buys as well that they've done in recent seasons. So I definitely think he's a player that represents amazing value with some really strong fixtures coming up. Finishing off, we're going to have, obviously, Son in this team. There was doubts about him in game week 16, but as duly delivered so far. Like I said, we're at half-time in that game. He's picked up 2 assists. Some really positive fixtures coming up for Tottenham Hotspur as well. Nottingham Forest, Everton, Brighton and Bournemouth. But even then, I think Son is a very easy hold till the end of the season. No Carabao Cup, no European football as well. So he's going to get himself a few days off as well, which is absolutely fantastic to see. Nottingham Forest, only 1 win and 11 for them in game week 17. Still pressure on Steve Cooper as well. And Spurs could have an absolute absolute field day with Son, potentially drifting on that left-hand side, sometimes playing up front. And in January, we probably are going to see the return of the likes of James Maddison as well. Returning from his injury, that could be absolutely massive and key for this Spurs side and for Son's future point projections as well. Moving on to the front line, we're going to go with Dominic Solanke, a man who's absolutely been on fire over the past 5 game weeks. The highest expected goal involvement amongst all forwards over that period. 4 goals for him. Luton at home. Great fixture for Bournemouth as well. Flying off the back of that 3-0 win over Manchester United. 5 unbeaten as well, with a win over Newcastle in there and a draw against Aston Villa. Iraola has definitely turned this Bournemouth side around, and Dominic Solanke is the key to kind of that pillar. Fits the talisman theory, plays 90 minutes on penalties as well, and at a bargain 6.6 million with some very, very strong fixtures. And even when Haaland does come back, the fixtures do tail off a little bit, but I feel he could be one of those players with limited striker options, that he could just be a very much third striker, long-term hold, and we just keep him and see how he does for the rest of the campaign. Moving on to our final forward, and it's going to be Ollie Watkins. Very similar to kind of what I've spoke about with Aston Villa. Actually, I haven't mentioned Aston Villa yet. This is the first time that I mentioned Aston Villa. Some really good fixtures coming up for them. Brentford, Sheffield United, Burnley, Everton, Newcastle and Sheffield United. I expect Ollie Watkins to be back on the score sheet very, very soon, ladies and gentlemen. He went up against the top 2 teams for expected goals conceded, but I think now with this positive fixture run coming up for Villa, I definitely can see him being back on the score sheet. He is the second best forward in the Premier League and the second best forward that you can have in the game. There's no real point kind of looking elsewhere or trying to be cute or fancy. I think you just go for Watkins. Very much nailed. Potentially could earn himself back penalties with Douglas Luiz's suspension as well. So if he gets one of those in the Brentford game and duly delivers, he could earn himself back on there. And Villa at the moment are flying, ladies and gentlemen, especially at home. 15 games unbeaten now for them as well. With Sheffield United at home, Burnley at home coming up, they could be cooking, and Ollie Watkins definitely could get himself on the score sheet. Let's have a quick run through of the bench before we finish up. Like I spoke about with Turner, 3.9 million. He's kind of seems to have potentially earned himself back into that Forest side. There are obviously other goalkeeper options. If Areola is fit, I'm definitely saying he's going to work his way back in there. Leno from Fulham definitely offers himself as a good option. He's been very consistent throughout the year, a very good point scorer as well, so he could be a nice option. On the bench as well, we do have Julian Alvarez. He's here just to kind of cover off Erling Haaland if you wanted to play him for this week. I put him on the bench because realistically, who are you going to drop out of these lot? It's really, really difficult to say, but I've just put him in here to potentially show you what you could do, or you could just put Haaland there if we get kind of news that he's going to be back for game week 19 and you just want to have him as a placeholder kind of player. That's potentially something that you could potentially go and do there. Diego Carlos was fantastic against Arsenal at the weekend. Villa as well, like we spoke about, really good home record, really good defensive record, and with some really good fixtures coming up, I definitely think they should be a defence you should be looking to get into. Obviously, Matty Cash has been dropped, and it looking like he's not going to get his place back in that starting lineup, so we are going to start to have to look at the likes of Ezri Konsa, Diego Carlos, these other defender options for our Villa defence. And I think at 4.4 million, he represents amazing value, gets in there nice and cheap for a top quality side as well. And then finishing up, it is my favourite player, 1 Point Charlie. He is suspended for game week 17, but will be back for game week 18. And yeah, he's just a very solid asset to go for, isn't he? For like 4 million, again, you can't really go too wrong with him, to be honest. That was the game week 17 wildcard. Let me know what you think of it down in the comment section below. If you have any questions about your team, get them in as well, as I will try to answer as many as I possibly can. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck this game week.